Welcome to the SaaS AdLab podcast, where we're going through the stories of SaaS founders, entrepreneurs, and CEOs. My name is Luis. I'm the founder of Fantôm agency, a digital marketing agency specialized in scaling SaaS companies. And today I have the pleasure of interviewing Xenia. She is the co-founder and CEO over at Planable, super successful company. So thank you so much for being on here. I know it's late for you as well, so appreciate you coming on board and rescheduling after we had a little hiccup there for a second. But
yeah, no worries. Yeah, thanks so much. Thanks so much for inviting me. I mean, I'm also very excited to do this.
Definitely, it's gonna be fun. And for anyone that's watching or listening, Xenia was very kind to provide anyone with a discount code. So if you want to try out Planable, you can get a 20% discount for 1 year using the code Fantom. So that's FANTOM. Just use that at checkout or wherever you enter that, and you should be able to get access to that. So again, thank you so much for that. And to get started, why don't you just tell us a little bit more, about yourself, a little bit on your background, and kind of like where did everything happen?
Yeah, definitely. So before starting Planable, I was running a social media marketing agency. I started it during my second year of university. I was always super passionate, about advertising world. I think I was, I had an obsession about this since I was, a teenager. I was reading everything I could get my hands on about, this world, about what's happening, all the news, and I was dreaming about going to university in this, in this area, and maybe at some point building my own agency. And it happened, faster than I expected, and I didn't, actually realize that I'm building an agency at that point. I just had, kind of freelance work clients in the beginning, and it all then shaped and wrapped up in an agency. And we were about 6 to 7 people. So it was still a very small team working mostly on social media, content, branding projects.
Mm-hmm.
And I had this idea and this image about the world about this industry we were operating in, that was, very innovative, very creative, kind of like cutting edge. But then, I realized that the way we were working were very outdated. I felt like, I was working with my clients in spreadsheets and, Microsoft Office and never-ending email threads. But on the other side, we were building like very graphic and gorgeous and moving and beautiful content that we were, keeping it in Excel files. And I felt like it wasn't doing justice to the content. Mm-hmm. I felt like I was wasting a lot of my own time, instead of, thinking and building strategies and building creative content. I was, formatting spreadsheets and building decks and sending emails all over all over again and again. So I felt like we needed to find a way to just improve this. So that's kind of how Planable got born. My co-founder, Nick, has also worked in an advertising agency, and he saw how his colleagues worked, and he thought about the solution. And, we got together with our third co-founder, Vlad, who also knew the industry. And we just wanted to solve this problem, not just for ourselves, because, in the meanwhile, we discovered that it's not just agencies in Europe or small agencies that are struggling with this. It's, kind of worldwide problem. So that's what Planable does. It helps social media teams collaborate more efficiently.
Very cool. And I feel like I can relate with a lot of that, because prior to Fantom, I was working at different agencies also, and I could see, although I was on the advertising side of things, so I didn't necessarily have to work with content as much. I was just, pushing it out and advertising that stuff. But I knew how, people were kind of struggling with the same thing, like create a spreadsheet, sit there and write content for hours, and format it and then copy and paste, right? Like to get it posted. So I'm sure you understand that. And it's really interesting, because a lot of the companies and a lot of the founders that I speak to, I wouldn't say, a majority of them, but a good amount of them have some sort of agency background, where that's kind of where they realize that there's a problem, and it's not just with one client or with one person, but it's on the entire level, right? So whether it's web development, social media, whatever it may be, like you see that kind of issue happen over and over again. And that's when they realize, like, there's something here that we can do about this. And we can scale it. So another question is, although that's the case, not everyone that does this, right, like build a product they're not thinking about this is going to help a ton of people. At the very beginning, most of them are thinking, you know, this is going to help our process become more streamlined. And then once they have that, then they realize, okay, that this can actually be a product and help many more companies. But from the beginning, did you and your team know that this was going to be something that you could scale tremendously?
That's actually what we wanted to do. You know, once we understood that this is going to be big, you know, all of us left our jobs. I closed down my agency. My co-founder Vlad, he was still in the university, so he dropped out of university, and you know, we moved from Moldova, where we're originally from. We moved to Romania, which is a, you know, it's a country in the European Union, and it has better opportunities for startups. So you know, our life changed dramatically because we knew that this is going to be big. It's not, you know, just to solve our own internal processes and in the agencies we were working, but this can help. You know, we wanted to make it worldwide, you know, from the beginning. We wanted this to be a global company, you know, from the beginning.
That's awesome. Now, to get a little backstory on, you know, how the three of you, because you said it's three co-founders, right?
Yeah.
Did all of you know each other personally, like you met up in person and stuff like that? Or did you meet like one or two of them, or maybe like online?
Yeah, that's a good question. So Moldova is a tiny, tiny country in Eastern Europe, and it has like 2 to 3 million people in total. So everyone kind of knows each other. You know, if you're young and if you're working in tech, yeah, you know each other. So yeah, I worked with Nick, with our CTO, in like a student organization before Planable. And I knew, you know, my third co-founder, Vlad, I knew him from, you know, just from social media. So we were connected. We never worked on something. We were not colleagues. We never worked on, you know, some real businesses before. But yeah, we knew each other, and, you know, we knew a lot of good stuff about each other. So it was a good start.
That's pretty cool. How did you guys actually come to the, you know, because you didn't work together and you just kind of knew about each other, when, like, how does it come to be that, you know, oh, like, you're going to be perfect fit for what I'm doing right now? Like, how did that come about?
Yeah, I think we got very, very lucky, honestly. But we first started working as a team on a project. So we were part of this hackathon, which is now, I think it was bought by Techstars, this big accelerator. It's called Startup Weekend. So it's a 48 hours hackathon where you build products. So that's, you know, I was doing my agency back then. But I was doing, you know, mostly content work. I'm also a designer, and I felt like I was not doing that much design work lately. So I just wanted to go to this hackathon, do some design work for like a cool product for just 48 hours and have a bit of fun. So I did that, and, you know, that's when I, you know, worked with Vlad and with Nick on a project, and we really, really liked, you know, working together. Awesome. And that's how, you know, that was the kind of the origins of Planable. You know, we really enjoyed doing that. And then, you know, someone noticed us and invited us to a pre-accelerator in Romania. So that's when, you know, we made the first step, and, you know, we started building Planable from scratch.
That's a really cool story. Now, to kind of switch gears here, right? The social media marketing world is so, like, it's so big. I don't think like,
yeah.
like people don't really understand like the you know, the magnitude of it, I think. But when you start to really think about it, it's huge. And then you also have some really, really big players in the space, right? Like you have Buffer, you have Hootsuite, you have one that I've used in the past was Falcon.io.
Yeah.
There's really good ones out there. So the question here is, how do you then try to differentiate yourself from these big companies that have been around for a while and people really know about them?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, we've been asking ourselves this question quite a lot, especially early in the beginning. And we realized one essential thing, that we're not a social media management tool. That's not what Planable does. Planable is a content management tool. And just so it happens that the content that you're managing inside Planable, you're going to push it on social media. But at the core, we're a content collaboration product. And that's, that's how we, set ourselves apart from everyone else. Because, we're not building analytics, we're not building listening, we're not building monitoring, we're not building ads optimization. We're not about social media management. We're about how can your team be as productive as possible when they're building, content, when they're collaborating, when they're planning. So we focus on the collaboration, and we're, I think we're doing it better than some of the companies that you've mentioned, because, this is our mission, and, we're crazy about it. And that's what we focus on 100%. And now we're doing it on social, but next, who knows what type of content format. I mean, we know, but it's not yet. It's not public.
Gotcha. So would it be possible then, essentially, because it is like, that is quite a difference, right? Would it be possible to then, let's say I was an agency that dealt with a lot of content, and not just that, but also the social media management piece of it. Could I then use Planable plus another tool to pair them together?
That's what's coming. Obviously, that's, integrating yourself in already a very big marketing stack is very important. It's 2019, integrations are crucial. So that's coming.
Very cool. Now, when it comes down to marketing, right? Like you mentioned that you've been in advertising, you're pretty obsessed with it. And so am I. What do you think is the biggest issue for not just, Planable, but for other companies that are very similar? Like, what is it that they struggle most with to get in front of people?
God, I think differentiating yourself, going back to your first question, even if your product is very different, you still have to be able to position yourself in a way that you convey that to people very clearly. Because the first moment you have social, on your website, on your header, you're automatically, being labeled as, in the same category as socially, as, Buffer and Hootsuite and Falcon and Sprinkler and Sprout Social and all those other companies. So it's hard to make it as clear as possible for people that, hey, now we're actually, it's a different use case, we're a bit, we're doing something else. So I think it's very hard. And I think, all the other companies that are trying to solve the same problem that we are solving, I think, they probably struggle with that as well, trying to differentiate yourself as much as possible and explain that this is actually a new category. Because this is, what's happening in social media. Companies like Hootsuite were born when social media was, pretty new. A company, companies were just adopting social media. So your first problem as a social media manager back then was, how do I automate my publishing? How do I not need to set up reminders so I can, post every time? I'm sure it happened, back then. But, that was a problem they were solving, and they became very successful at it, being, one of the best scheduling tools out there very early on. But things have changed, and social media became bigger and bigger. And, with the latest changes of the Facebook algorithm, it's pay to play. So that means that more money are being, invested in this. And, once more money are being invested, more people are paying attention to this. Totally. So that means that now it is 100% a collaborative effort. It's a team effort. So that means that this is, why what we're doing has become important now. And it hasn't been, in the last, maybe 5 years ago. So this is kind of a pretty new category that we're shaping. So it's hard to explain that, it's hard to pioneer a new category to people.
Totally. And the cool thing about that too is that you have, kind of the power to say where it's going to go.
Yeah,
it's a big responsibility at the same time, but it's you get to say that you were the pioneer in that space.
Yeah, I mean, you're on the ground floor of it, and it's still, you do not have that much clarity of where this is going to go, but it is definitely, exciting. You definitely do not have like a magic globe to look into it and say, this is how the category is going to look like in a few years. It's also hard when you're a startup and you're fundraising and you have to explain, to your investors your category and where it's going to be in a few years, because there's not that much, reports and stats and studies on this thing. So you have to try and figure it out on your own. But yeah, it's exciting.
Really cool. That's awesome. How long has Planable been around for?
So we started 3 years ago. So first 1.5 years we were, purely in like developing the product. 1.5 years, we were not really funded. We had like a small 20,000 investment from an angel / accelerator. So we didn't really have that much money to put into development and production. So it was just us, the co-founders, and we're 3 co-founders. One of us was a technical co-founder, is a technical co-founder. So it took us a 1.5 years to develop the product, iterate on it, do customer development, make sure that what we're building is, people are gonna love it. Right. Do customer development, talk with people, do a bit of, beta testing. And then, after a 1.5 years, we managed to put the product on the market, and we start, monetizing it, optimizing it, and we've been growing since then.
That's awesome. That's really cool. What's like, as far as making sure that the product gets out there, what's been like the most successful thing? Is it just, cold outreach, email campaigns? Have you been doing a lot of content writing? What's been like the thing that has been the most successful for you?
Yeah. So we've been doing, the thing we're preaching, content. Right. So we've been building a lot of content. Early in the beginning, yes, we were doing, cold outreach. We were doing really everything, anything we could, experiment with. Because very early on, when you're launching the product, and you're not generating that much money, it's a desperate situation. So you're trying to do as much as you can to demonstrate that you didn't lose time 1.5 years building the product.
Totally.
But then once we figured out what are the things, that are working, we've doubled down on those. And we realized that that's, for us, it's content. And it's, inbound in general. Right. So we've invested a lot in our SEO. We've invested a lot in building different content initiatives. We've launched 2 ebooks so far. Our blog is super, super active. Last week, we launched a content academy, a series of 8 videos where experts from our industry that, are more knowledgeable than we are. They're talking about how can you build a content team, what your workflow should look like, and, it's free. And, we're trying to provide as much value for our industry. And I think that's, it has worked pretty well for us so far.
Do you think that one of the reasons why, the workshop, and this is currently going on right now, the workshop that you talked about?
Yes, it's an academy, so it's just online, and it's, we're releasing 1 episode a week. So yes, it's still, it's still ongoing.
Okay, and how are people finding about that?
We're promoting it on social media, obviously. Our user base, I think it's a lot of word of mouth as well, newsletters. We've grown our newsletter to 5,000, people, and we had 62 1.5 years ago.
Wow, that's a lot of growth. That's awesome.
Yeah, so it's been growing, better than I expected, to be honest. And yeah, the academy is still, rolling.
Have you guys ever invested into any paid advertising?
Good question. Very little, like 500 euros a month, little. We've only now started ramping this up. We hired someone on the digital marketing side with a strong focus on paid. So we are now, since last month, we started, experimenting with bigger budgets. But it's still, we're still playing around with it, trying to figure out what works best for us. But we haven't, heavily invested in ads so far. So it has been, mostly organic.
And what do you know? I don't know if you know the granular details of that, but is he or she, are they mainly pushing out content to kind of educate people on Planable to create brand awareness, or are you, or are they just like trying to get signups right up front?
So she has two strategies. One, she's promoting the content that we're building. The second strategy is looking at our entire conversion, pipeline, our entire conversion flow, and figuring out where paid can influence better conversions. Obviously, retargeting, but then looking at tying data to our ads, like looking at people who have started the free trial but maybe haven't done anything in it,
Right.
and just trying to use ads at different touch points in customer journeys, but also what you mentioned, just trying to bring as much traffic into our website as possible.
Right, and that's kind of like some of the things that you'll see like the bigger companies doing, right? That's something that I've always preached is, I mean, not copy obviously exactly what others are doing, but obviously like take a look at what's, the HubSpots or the Buffers of the world are doing that is successful, and then try to implement that in your own way with your own, twist on it. But you'll see a lot of them just advertising a lot of content, right? Whether it's like a webinar where they have your, advertising to their blog posts and stuff like that, trying to educate people, and so on. And essentially, if the sales process, once they find about you, is good, then you should be able to keep them around enough to actually get them to convert.
Yeah, I think it makes sense, this type of strategy. I mean, promoting the content that you've built. This type of content initiatives are very similar to launching products, right? You've been building a product for so long, you can't just expect, there was this saying that people know that it's not true anymore, build it and they will come. Yeah, that's not how things work anymore. Maybe it was, working very early in the beginning of the internet, but not anymore. So with content projects, again, it's the same thing. You can't just build it and expect that people will come. So you need to put some real dollars behind it, because you've already invested a lot, right, in producing that content.
Totally.
Months and months of, production work. So it's just a pity not to back it with a serious advertising budget.
That's awesome. That's really cool. When it comes down to the more personal side of actually being the founder of a company, like what is the hardest thing that you've been challenged with? I know that's a pretty heavy question.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that's a tough one. The hardest thing I've ever been challenged with.
Yeah, because I feel like we're challenged every single day, but like the hardest one.
Oof. I'm not sure. I mean, there's been, it's a roller coaster. So it's always ups and downs. But I think challenging the way we see the product, I think that was one of the biggest pain points, realizing that, just being a social media management tool is not going to cut it.
Right.
And realizing what we are, like taking a hard look at where we are, where can we be the best. I think that was really, one of the hardest things. And like, yeah, and that's one. And on a more personal side for myself as a CEO, I think just letting go. But that doesn't sound good, I know, but hear me out. I'm a bit of a perfectionist, and I'm not saying that with arrogance. That's bad to be a perfectionist. It's very bad, and I'm aware of that. And I think, my team is challenging me to let go of that, because sometimes it's not worth it. It's not, worth launching perfect projects. Right. Sometimes it's more important to launch something and then, build it and iterate on it on the go while it's already live. And you can do that, not just with products, not just with software, but you can do that, with marketing work as well. So it's really important to do that. And I think, sometimes I'm definitely, one of my vulnerabilities is the fact that I'm overthinking things, and, I want them to be their best.
Mhm.
But sometimes it's more important to move fast than have, your best work ever.
Totally. Yeah. And I mean, it's time consuming, right? And if it's something that nobody has seen before, you have no feedback on it, you don't know what it's going to do. And you're sitting there literally like making sure every single detail is to your perfection. It's very time consuming, and it's like, and once you launch it, it doesn't do what you want it to do, then you don't really know where to go. Um,
Yeah.
totally. I think that's a big thing. And it's good to be aware of it also, because I feel like a lot of people that, have that kind of challenge, or have that, kind of blocking mentality, I guess, if you want to call it that, they don't necessarily know that they have it. And that's when it becomes problematic, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I
That's,
agree.
that's awesome that you're open about it, and that you are working towards that. So that's awesome. Now we're getting close here. So if you could go back 3 years and tell yourself one thing, what would that be?
It's going to be okay.
I love it. That's awesome. And your favorite SaaS company aside from Planable?
My favorite SaaS company. I have a crush on Notion lately.
My God, yes.
Big crush. I had a similar crush on Airtable before that. So those were my last, obsessions in terms of, SaaS products. I feel that they're just so beautiful. They bought me with their UI and with just how easy it is
Notion
to
is something else. I mean, I kind of live by Notion right now, so I feel the exact same way.
we're still figuring out how to use it
Mhm.
at Planable. I think I introduced it, in my team when I didn't know what we're going to use it for yet. I just felt like it's such a good product. We're going to find a use for it.
Totally.
But we're still, trying to figure out if we're using it as a wiki
Right.
tool, documentation, what else, but it's a great product.
It definitely is. And one of the last questions here: where can people find you online, Xenia?
LinkedIn, spending most of my time on LinkedIn. So hit me up there, Xenia Muntean.
Sounds good. And last question: do you have any questions for me?
Any questions for you? Yes. How hard was it to build a podcast? Because we're thinking about that as
Yeah.
well. So
I
to
mean,
start, I think, the hard, like similarly to the, going to the gym, it's
right.
the hardest part to
Well,
start. I think.
it's easy, right? Like that's the short answer. It's you just have to
Okay.
do it. You just have to sit down and do it. But I
Not
mean,
overthink it.
right, don't overthink it. But essentially, like really, the hardest part about it is putting your mindset to it and like figuring out, what are we going to talk about? What am I going to be saying? If it's just going to be me talking, am I going to be interviewing kind of people and stuff like that? Like approach you want to have. But also like putting yourself out there tends to be difficult, especially I think at the very early stages, because you don't really know if people are going to be, if they're going to want to be on the podcast. And then like people don't really want to be the first one on there, because that means that you don't really have an audience. But it's cool. It's fun. It's really, really fun.
That's a good answer. It's an optimistic answer for
Yeah,
me.
you just got to do it. And you learn a ton. You learn a ton of things from interviewing people, if that's the route you want to go. Or if
Yeah.
you feel like you're very good at something and you want to share it, or just share your thoughts, then it's also very rewarding as well.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah. But thanks so much, Xenia, for being on here today. It was a pleasure having you, and let's stay in touch.
Thank you so much as well. It was great.
Bye-bye.
Bye.